Today's shiur begins 9 lines from the top of Daf Mem. You'll notice a Mishnah at the upper part of the Daf, which represents our beginning point. The Mishnah. Yisoima shenis arsa v'nisgarsha. This is a phrase or an opening of the Mishnah that is going to be clarified by the Gemara. And Rashi already tells us that the expression shenis arsa v'nisgarsha is not a continuation of the word yisoma per se. So if we we have to be careful with the way we approach the translation of the Mishnah. A yisoma is a girl who does not have a father, and nisarsa v'nisgarsha is a girl that had entered the first stage of marriage and then was divorced. And we're talking about the payment in the case of rape or seduction. So the Mishnah continues saying, Rebbe Ozer Omer, in these cases, the rapist will have to pay the fine, but the mefateh, the seducer, will not. Now, we continue with the Gemara with a long point, and before we do that, we glance at the side under the nosei, the topic heading, which reads as follows: Hoichacha, a proof, she Rebbe Ozer sover k'Rabbi Akiva, that Rebbe Ozer follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Denaro shenis arsa v'nisgarsha yesh lo knas. This, by the way, was a Tanaic controversy that we have seen in recent dapim of this parak, where there was a Tanaic controversy involving Rabbi Akiva, an opinion saying that a girl that was nisarsa, she became an arusa, she entered the first stage of marriage and then was divorced, and there would be no knas payment. Rabbi Akiva says there is a knas payment. The Mishnah here features Rebbe Ozer, and Rebbe Ozer says there is a knas payment in the case of rape. Omar Rabbo Bar Chana Omar Rabbi Yochanan. Rebbe Ozer, in our Mishnah that says that a girl who had entered marriage and was divorced and was raped, there's a knas payment. Beshitas Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Omra. He is saying this based on his teacher Rabbi Akiva. De Omar, Rabbi Akiva appeared on the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, where he says, Yesh lo knas uknosu liatzma. A girl who was an arusa and divorced and was raped, a knas payment is made, and it's paid to her, as opposed to a girl who was a naro that was never married. The father would receive the payment. So Rabbi Akiva says that a payment is made, and it's made to her. And in our Mishnah, we see Rebbe Ozer saying the same thing. Mimai, where do we see that in our Mishnah? Midikotani, from the fact that our Mishnah said the following: Yisoma. Notice we're reading the word Yisoma in isolation. Yisoma. Rebbe Ozer Omer Hoinis Chayav Mefata Potter. Now Yisoma is translated as an orphan, and Rebbe Ozer says that if you are dealing with an orphan, she doesn't have a father, and the girl is raped, so the rapist must pay, and the mefate, if she's seduced, so there's no payment. Yisayim pshita, when you're dealing with an orphan, so it's obvious that a rapist will have to pay, and the mefate, where there is seduction, and seduction means she agrees, so the seducer will be exempt. There's no one to pay to. She's a yisoma, she doesn't have a father. And the father would be the one to receive the payment. She's not going to get paid. She doesn't. She agreed with the act. So, what is the point of featuring Yisoma in our Mishnah? Eloha komash molon. The following is the point that we were being taught. The nara shenisarsa v'nisgarsha kiyasoma. A girl, a nara, that had entered marriage and was divorced, and then was raped, is like the case of Yasoma. Ma Yasoma la'atzma, just like in the case of Yasoma, the payment is made to her if she doesn't have a father. Af nara shenisarsa v'nisgarsha, so to that girl, even though she might very well have a father, nevertheless the payment is made la'atzma, is made to her. And that is what Rabbi Kiva said back on Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph. Omar Rabbi Zera, Omar Rabbo Bar Shila, Omar Rav Hamnuna Saba, Omar Rav Ado Bar Ava, Omar Rav, Halacha Kerebi Elazar. The halacha follows Rebbe Elazar. This is Rebbe Elazar ben Shamua, a student of Rabbi Akiva, and therefore the Narosh in his Arsav in his Garsha payment is made, and it's made to her. Kori Rav Olei de Rebbe Elazar, Rav referred to this Tana to Vino de Hakimi, the best, the choicest of the sages. A very wonderful accolade to receive. Ezehu Boishes. We have mentioned in our previous shiur that the girl who was raped, girl is seduced, so there's a boshes payment. Boshes has to do with embarrassment. So the Mishnah says, if you want to understand boshes, how is boshes calculated? Well, hakol lefi hamavayish v'hamizbayish. It's something that depends on who was the one who caused the busha and who was the one who was the victim of the busha. So that Rashi has a very, very interesting point here. When it comes to the offender, the one who causes busha, causes embarrassment, the highest form of embarrassment is that which is generated by what we call an Odom Beinoni, a common man, a regular individual. If a person, for example, is a very important, a very lofty individual, so the person who feels that he was embarrassed by such a person, it's not as great a feeling of deprecation as would be experienced by someone who is, let's say, one's equal, creating the embarrassment. And likewise, if the offender is a very lowly individual, so you probably wouldn't pay any attention to what he is saying in his embarrassment, or whatever he's doing, whatever act he's doing to create the embarrassment. The generator, the offender himself, is a lowly individual, so one would not feel so disparaged. That's as far as the offender is concerned. Now, the victim, that depends on one's importance. The more important an individual is, the greater the embarrassment, the greater the boshes is. The Mishnah continues, Pagam. Pagam is maybe loosely translated as depreciation. How is that figured here? Royen oisa kilo yishivcha nimkeres b'shuk. We view her as if she were a bondmaid sold in the market. Kama yisiyafa, kama yafa. How much was she worth beforehand, and how much is she worth now? Now meaning after the rape. And there's more to say about this as well later. Knas, the Knas payment, Shava b'chol Adam, is an equal amount paid with regard to whomever was the victim. V'chol sheyesh lo kitzva min haTorah Shava b'chol Adam. Penalties that are imposed by the Torah, set amounts that are imposed as penalties in the Torah, there no distinction is made concerning who the victim is. It's an equal payment. It's the same payment made equally amongst all victims. Before we continue, on the side of the Gemara we have a Nosei Mivneh heading. We have a triangle that will appear shortly. Hesberim, these represent explanations. Lama ein hachamishim shemishalmim lanusa. Why is it that the 50 pieces of silver, the 50 shekel kesef that we pay the rape victim, why is it that that 50 does not include lokilim kol atashlumin shel boishis upagam? When we say, the Torah says, if someone rapes a girl, he has to pay 50. Why is it that the 50 doesn't necessarily include all the payments? Heora, we want to note something. Hayesoid shebetshuvoisav sheRabbi Zerahu, the basis of the answers that Rabbi Zera gives, she'ima knas oyatashlim abiladi, if the knas was the only payment made, oz ein derech lirois havdelim bein mikre einis sheinim b'chumrasam, we wouldn't be able to see any distinctions, any differences between different cases of rape and their different levels of severity. V'yotze sheboal, the result would be sheboal bas malochim yeshalem oisatashik mishe boal nara pshuta. The result would be that the payment made for one who rapes a princess would be the same as the one who rapes a simple common girl. So we're assuming in this discussion, we're making an assumption that there's got to be some manifestation of difference. And how will we be able to accomplish that? If we establish that the 50 is not the sole payment. So the 50, granted, that will be a uniform payment regardless of who the victim is. But as far as seeing a difference between the different types of people that are affected by this, a method of manifesting the difference will be accomplished through the additional payments that we've already discussed. The boshes, the pagam, the level of depreciation will be much greater. The level of embarrassment will be much greater if it's a significant type girl that was offended, that was violated. Now we turn to the Gemara. V'ema chamishim sloim omer achmona mikol mili. Why not say that the 50 is inclusive of all the other payments, the boshes and pagam as well? Omar Rabbi Zera. Before we go too much further, we noted already the triangles in the under our mivneh heading. These are all explanations. We have a series of explanations. We have Rabbi Zera, Aleph and Beis. So he's the first opinion, but there are two presentations, two stages in presenting Rabbi Zera. He'll be followed by Abaye, who is followed then by Rava. So we continue now in the Gemara. Omar Rabbi Zera. Yomru, if we don't make any distinction, if we say that the 50 covers everything, people will say, Boal bas melochem chamishim, Boal bas hedyotas chamishim. For the rape of a princess, 50 is paid, and for the rape of a common girl, 50 is paid. And there's, let's just say there's something wrong with that. There's got to be a difference between the two. Omar le Abaye. Well, Abaye says, there's got to be a difference, and that's why the 50 isn't going to cover everything. Ihachi gabi eved nami. There's another form of knas payment, and that's in the event that a man's animal kills someone's slave. The Torah says, upon the death of a slave as a result of an animal killing him, the owner of the animal must pay 30 shkolim. That's the fee, or the fine, the Torah imposed fine for the death of a slave at the hands or at the horns of an animal. Now, in the realm of slaves, there's a whole range of slaves. There are slaves that are highly skilled individuals, and there are slaves that are very we'll call unskilled. So, according to Rabbi Zera's logic, is this not going to then be a problem? With regard to the payment called shloishim shalev, 30 the payment of 30 for the death of an Eved, Yomru, people will say, Eved noikev margolios shloishim. Eved oise, we continue at the top of Omid Beis, Maisa machat shloishim. An Eved noikev margolios literally is an Eved who is skilled in making, in piercing pearls. Imagine a diamond cutter, considered very highly skilled individual. If he's killed by an animal, we pay the owner of the animal has to pay 30. And the truth is that if an Eved who happens to be rather unskilled, his skill is in the realm of quilting, he's Maisa Machat, needlework, which is considered a low-level skill, we pay 30 there also. So it seems that the Torah isn't that concerned with showing a distinction. So if the Torah is not so concerned with showing a distinction, let's go back to square one and say, let the 50 cover everything. Elo Omar Rabbi Zera. So Rabbi Zera has a new approach that says that it's likely that the 50 isn't going to cover everything. And to be more specific, it's likely that the boishes is not going to be included within the 50. Because if the boishes, if the payment for embarrassment is included within the 50, so then we're going to run into the following, and we'll go into the Gemara. Elo Amar Rabbi Zera, Ilu Bo'u Oleho Shnayim. Imagine a girl that happened to have experienced, we'll call it an unusual form, or the uncommon form of intimacy. It's called Bia Shalo Kadaka. It's where the man, has sexual intimacy with the woman, but not in the normal way. We'll call it the posterior orifice. So if you have a woman that already experienced that, it's called Bia Shalo Kadaka. Technically speaking, for our purposes, when you're dealing with rape, we said that a virgin is the only situation where the fine of 50 will be paid. So we're talking right now in the context of the payment of 50. A girl like that is considered a basula, even though she already experienced intimacy, but the intimacy was we'll call it the Bia Shalo Kadaka fashion. And a girl like that has already, we'll say, been through the experience of, bodily contact with another man. Contrast her to a girl that's never had any form of intimacy whatsoever. The level of, we'll say, shock and embarrassment is different. And that's what Rabbi Zera addresses. He says, Ilu bo aleo shnayim. Echad kedarka ve'echad shelo kedarka. Now, the order of these expressions could be very, very confusing. We're describing a girl who had experienced this form of, we'll say, sexual contact by two men. The first man, and that's what is referred to as the Shelo Kedaka, that was at the outset. And then the rapist, he comes and he then does his act of rape in the Kedarka fashion, the normal form of intimacy between male and female. And can contrast that with a girl that never had any experience whatsoever. Her first experience is the rape. Yamru, people will say, Boal Shleimo, Chamishim Shleimo is a reference to literally it's the complete girl. It's the girl that never had any experience whatsoever, and her first contact is this reprehensible act of rape. And 50 is paid to her, or because of to her father. 50 is paid in her case. Boal Pagumo Chamishim. Pagumo is the girl that already experienced this. She's already, let's say, knocked down a peg. So, could that be? Could it be that the same rate will be paid in the case of the first time girl experience for the first time for her experience versus the one that's already had this type of experience. So Rabbi Zera's feeling is that the payment has to reflect a difference. There's a difference in the level of busha, of embarrassment, of emotional defilement that these two girls experience. So because the payment has to reflect the difference, we cannot say that the 50 covers everything in cases of rape. Omar le Abaye ihachi gabi eved nami yomru. Well, he goes back to the case of eved, which is also a fixed payment for all cases of avodim. Abaye says, in the case of slaves being killed by animals, Nami Yomu, people will end up saying, Eved Bori Shloshim, Eved Mukeshchin Shloshim. Could it be that a healthy Eved that's killed, the owner will receive 30 in payment for his death, and an Eved that's afflicted with boils also should receive that? And in fact, that's what the din is. The payment doesn't reflect any distinction. So if you're going to work with this idea that the payment has to reflect the distinction, that's not true. That brings us back to square one. Then why is it that the 50 paid in the case of onus is not in fact all inclusive of all the payments? Elo Omar Abaye Omar Kro. Here we go to a scriptural reference. The pasuk says Tachas Asher Ino. The 50 is paid Tachas Asher Ino. And we explain, Hani, the 50, Tachas Asher Ino. That's paid for the inui that is experienced. Now, inui, I saw a translation of the word inui as being humbled. And Rashi makes a point, and as a result of Rashi, I was I could not have translated inui as simply for the pain or the suffering, because Rashi says that the inui is a phenomenon that does not exist by other chavolas, by other forms of injury that might be inflicted by perpetrators on people. There is pagam, there's boshes, but there's no inui. So inui, as I said, I saw in a translation, was translated as humbled. So Abaye says that the 50 is paid because of the inui. So the 50 is because of the inui, is paid for the inui that she experienced. Michlal de'ika boshes v'gam. That leaves room to think that the 50 doesn't cover all the other losses. It covers the feeling of disparagement or of humbling that the rape generates in the person and the girl, but there's still other payments that need to be made. The 50, therefore, is not all-inclusive. It covers the inui aspect of things, but not the other losses. Rava Omar Kro, the pasuk says, "V'nosano ish hashochei v'imo lavi anaro chamishim kesef." Again, the pasuk by rape, it says the rapist pays the father of the girl 50 kesef for what? Hanoas shchiva, for the intimacy itself. Chamishim, nun means 50. Michlal, this leaves room to infer that the Ika Boshes V'gam, there are other payments as well. In other words, the 50 is limited as compensation for the fact that he enjoyed the intimacy with her. But the 50 doesn't cover the Boshes and Pegam. Therefore, the 50 is not all inclusive. The Gemara asks, V'emo l'dida. Why not say that the additional payments besides the knas, those payments are paid to the girl herself? And of course, we are working with the assumption or with the knowledge that that all the payments are made to the father. But why should that be? On the side, we have a nosei mivne heading, the topic heading and structural note where a diamond is featured. Shuvos, these are answers la sheila lama kol hatashlumin b'noisaf liknas lovi v'lo l'dido. Why are the additional payments beyond the fine? Why are they also paid to the father and not paid to her? The fine, that is legislated explicitly by the Torah, that is paid to the father. We just saw that it quoted in the Gemara. But what about the additional payments? Hence the Gemara's question, why not say that they are paid to her? Omar Krol, so the Gemara answers, Binureo Beisavia. And from this pasuk we want to say, Kol Shvach Nureo Leavia. All profits, all benefits that the girl generates are to her father. So at this moment, Binureo Beisavia is supposed to serve as our source. However, the Gemara challenges this, and it challenges with a long question. V'ela, ha di Omar Rav Huna Marav, that which Rav Huna taught in the name of Rav, minayin shemaisa bas lovia, from where do we know that a daughter who produces income, that the income, the maisa bas, if she's a weaver, or she's a baker, and people pay her for her services, that the income the bas produces goes to her father. From where do we know that? From this pasuk, which describes a father selling his daughter into servitude. And we now make a comparison. Just like a Jewish bondmaid, when she is involved with in servitude to the purchaser, that the Rabba means her master, her profits go to her master. By the same token, a daughter pays her income to her father. So now that's the source that Rav gives for Maisa Habas Lavia. Lamali, why does he have to cite that as the source, the comparison between the bondmaid master relationship, daughter father? Why resort to that? Tepukle, why doesn't Rav learn out that a daughter's income goes to her father? Bin mi bunureh beisavia. So I'll tell you why he didn't. Why did Rav not use binureh beisavia? Eloai ba'foras nedorim hu dichtiv. That pasuk is teaches us that a father has the power to absolve his daughter's vows. We say, well, so good, very nice. The pasuk is talking about a father's power over his daughter's vows, but let us use that as a precedent that a father has control over his daughter's income also. And by the way, I know maybe we should have said this earlier. We're talking about daughters that they're rather young. We're talking till age 12 and a half. Above that, the girl keeps her own income. She's an adult. But we're talking right now of a young girl under 12 and a half. So why we're in the middle of a question? Why is it that Rav when it comes to Maisa Habas, girl's income, why does he cite the Chiyimkor as his mukar, as his source, and not Binureh Beisavia? So we said, well, it could be because Binureh Beisavia deals with a specific topic of father's power over vow absolution. Well, you might say, let's learn from that. Let that be a precedent. Just like a father has control over his daughter's vows, a father has control over his daughter's income. One says, no, you can't say that. We're dealing with different realms of halacha, financial and non-financial. Isura, if you want to term that as the realm of Judaism that's outside the realm of finance, the ritual realm, the religious realm of Judaism. They're different realms, so you do not determine matters of finances from matters of ritual. Mamona meisur lo yalfinon. V'chitemo neilif miknasa. You might say, why doesn't Rav, when trying to determine daughter's income going to father, learn that from the realm of knas? The knas is we saw before the pasuk said the fine for rape goes to the father, just like the fine goes to the father. Why not say that the daughter's income also goes to the father based on knas? The Gemara says once again, mamona miknasa yofin. You're dealing with different realms. You can't learn cross realm. There's one of basic financial concern, and then there's the realm of knas, which is not market value finance, but rather fines imposed, and they are different realms. You cannot learn one from the other. So that at this point, it's very clear that income generated by the daughter is not that income generated by the daughter goes to the father is not learned from the pasuk of Benura Beis Avia. That's clear. So how do we know that income, that monies, that profits that are generated by the daughter, and if we want to be more specific, things like boshes and pagam, where the daughter experiences embarrassment or depreciation, which involves payment, compensation for that the compensation goes to the father. Where do we learn that from? Elo mistabra de avia have. It's a matter of logic. The father has, we'll say, power or control over boshes and pagam of his daughter. The boy mosar law. If the father had wanted to, he could have given over his daughter in marriage lemenuvel mukishchin to men that are, for lack of better expression, that are disgusting. They're physically repulsive individuals. A menuvel, mukishchin, is a person whose body is afflicted with boils. Now, for a girl to be, let's say, married, let's say forcibly married to a guy like that, now this is a father, the father has a right, a Torah right to do it. We're not here to debate whether it's a good thing to do, it's a nice thing to do, it's a humanistic thing to do. That's not the issue right now. We're dealing with a legal right. The father has a legal right to, in effect, give his daughter in marriage to a menuvel or a mukishchin, and that's like the ultimate form of boshes and pagam. So since the father has control over those matters, when he gets paid, because the kesef kiddushin, the marriage money that the menuvel mukishchin pays, he pays that to the father in exchange for receiving the daughter as his wife. So since the father has control over that, he can receive money for, in effect, creating boshes and pagam in the daughter. Now that she has been raped, so that causes pagam, that causes depreciation in the girl. This is we'll say, an amount of money that the father could have received had it not happened. Now that it's happened, he will receive less because of this. So he deserves compensation, the compensation for that. The Rashi we can look at together. The Rashi we're looking at is slightly less than halfway down the page. L'menuvu mukishchin k'disnan l'kamon, as the Mishnah teaches later. Av zaka bevito b'kedisha b'kesuv shtar b'piyah. A father has control over the marriage of his daughter to a man, either through receiving money in exchange for her marriage, or a document-based marriage, or an intimacy-based marriage where the initial acquisition is through biyah. The kevon de biyoder litol momon lefogmo levaisho, since the father has the power to receive money from a menuvel or mukashin, which in effect would be pogame and mevayesh her, ulevaisha bushazu, hashta afsidei hai the pogma. Now that the rapist raped her, he caused this depreciation to set in. And therefore, the father deserves to receive that payment. We continue in the Gemara. Pagam, the Mishnah said that in order to establish how much one pays for Pagam, we, as a result of her having been raped, we look at her as a bondmaid that's sold in the market, how much she would have been sold for had this not happened, and how much she would be sold for as a now that it has happened. Heishi Shaimin law. How do we make this calculation, this estimation? Omar Avu Shmuel, Oimdin Kamadam Roitzu Litain. We Omeid has to do with an assessment. We assess how much would a person pay? Bain shivcha basula l'shivcha beula l'shamsho. The house marking that you see here is to highlight, and we have on the side the same heading. Tshuva zech sheiminun habagamba, is how do we estimate? How do we assess the pagam payment, the depreciation payment in the case of a girl that's been raped? So the first approach is how much we assess. How much? What's the difference in the amount a person would pay for a bondmaid that's a virgin versus a bondmaid that had experienced intimacy, in order for him to be served by this particular shifcha. So we have a girl that's going to be taking care of, say, house cleaning and making coffee for some guy that just bought her. So what's the difference in how much he would pay for a girl that's a virgin versus a girl that experienced intimacy? So more ask, what is there a difference? Shivcha beula l'shamsho mai nafka le mina. He's buying her to make coffee for him. What difference does it make what happened with her if she had intimacy or not? That wouldn't result in the difference in her price. Ella bein shivcha beula l'shivcha sheina beula. How much difference is there in the amount charged for a shivcha that had experienced intimacy versus one that never experienced intimacy? Lahasil li'avdo, where his intention is to take the shivcha and mate her with his slave. Man has a slave and he wants to marry he wants his slave to be married to a shivcha. So the assumption right now is that there's going to be a difference in price between a shivcha that's be'ula versus a shivcha that's not be'ula. The Gemara asks, Uli avdoi mai nafka le minos, regarding his slave, what difference does it make? What difference does it make to the master what kind of shivcha he marries to his slave? His whole point in marrying, providing a wife for his slave, is so that we'll say little slavelets would be born, increasing his workforce. So for let's say child production, it doesn't make any difference whether the woman experienced intimacy or not. So where do you see a difference between a be'ula and a basula? The Gemara answers, Be'eved sheyesh lo l'rabbi kiras ruach heimenu. We're dealing with a master, an owner of a slave, that feels a sense of indebtedness to his slave. He wants to compensate his slave, to show his gratitude to his slave. And how will he show his gratitude, his appreciation of his slave? By getting for him a shivcha, by purchasing a shivcha that will provide his slave with maximum gratification. And if you ask people, what would they prefer? A woman that had experienced intimacy, or what is a virgin that never experienced intimacy? People would say, hands down, they would prefer having a woman, receiving a woman, a wife, a mate that never experienced intimacy. And people will pay more for her than they would for a girl that had experienced intimacy. So that difference is the pagam payment that we're looking for here. The Mishnah. Kol mokoim sheyesh mecher ein knas. Any stage of a girl's life where the father could sell her, mecher means the father has the power to sell her, there would be no knas payment. To put things simply, the Mishnah itself will explain this on the next line, but we're referring to a ktana. A father can sell his daughter up till she reaches the age of 12. This is, we'll say, something unique to the realm of sales up till the age of 12 and not beyond that. A father can sell. So any situation where the girl can be sold by her father into servitude, there is no knas payment. That means, according to the Tanakama of our Mishnah, the first opinion, this is a machlokas tanoim, and the Gemara will point that out. According to our Mishnah, a girl who is under 12 years that happens to be raped will not generate the 50 shekel kesef payment, the knas payment. The chol mokim sheyesh knas ein mecher. And at any point in the girl's age that knas would be paid in the event of her being raped, a father cannot sell her anymore. And it's now explained. Ktana, when you deal with a minor, she's under 12 years of age, yesh lo mecher, the father could sell her, v'ein lo knas, if she's raped there will be no knas payment. Naro yesh lo knas v'ein lo mecher, a girl between 12 and 12 and a half, if she's raped, a knas payment would be made, but a father can no longer sell her. When a girl reaches age 12, she actually leaves the servitude. Haboigeres, a girl at age 12 and a half, ein lo mecher v'lo knas, a father doesn't sell her, and likewise there is no knas paid in the event that she is raped. On the side, we point out under the nosei heading, machlokes tanoim im yesh knas l'ktana. We will see that the issue of knas paid in the event that a minor under 12 years of age is raped, does that generate a knas payment? This is a machlokes tanoim. Omar Rav Yehuda, we go back to the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Marav, zu divrei Rabbi Meir. Our Mishnah that says no knas for the rape of a ktana is in accordance with Rabbi Meir. Chachamim omrim yesh lo knas b'mokom mecher. The Rabbanon, the Chachamim say there is a payment of a knas even in situations that the father is able to sell the daughter, and the father can sell the daughter as long as she is under 12. And the Chachamim say if she happens to be raped at that age, there would, yes, be a knas payment. The Sanya, we have a Tanaic source that cites this machlokes tanoim. Ktano mibas yoimechod v'ad shetovi shtei sairos, a girl from the day she's born until she brings forth 2 pubic hairs, till we say basically age 12. Yesh lo mecher v'ein lo knas. A father can sell her, but there is no knas payment if she's raped. Mishetovi shtei sairos ad shetiboger, from the point she brings forth the 2 pubic hairs until she reaches bagrus, and we generally say that means from age 12 to 12 and a half. Yesh lo knas v'ein lo mecher, divrei Rabbi Meir. A knas would be paid if she's raped, but the father can no longer sell her. That's Rabbi Meir's approach. Hoy Rabbi Meir, Omer, kol mokom sheyesh mecher ein knas. Rabbi Meir stated as a rule that wherever the girl could be sold, namely up till age 12, there's no knas payment if she would be raped. The chomokum sheyesh knas, in any situation that would generate knas, ein mecher. What do we mean by that? Between age 12 and 12 and a half, which was an age at which knas would be paid, the father can no longer sell her into servitude. V'chachomim omrim, Ktano mibas sholosh shonim v'yom ve'ad sheti boger, yesh lo, now we skipped the bracketed section, knas b'mokol mecher. What we skipped was a section in which the language is not accurate, and we'll go over it shortly. The Chomim say that a girl from age 3 years and a day till 12 and a half, during this time period, yesh lo knas, there is the presence of knas b'mokol mecher. During this time period, there is the power of the father to sell her. Now, we're not saying during the entire time period, but there is a certain amount of overlap during that time period. Now let's go over this again with the Chachomim. The Chachom said, "Tanabas bibas sholosh shanim v'yemechot v'achdi boger yesh lo knas." The knas payment would be made. So we ask, knas in mecher lo, but only knas, the father doesn't have a right to sell her? Emo, rather say, af knas b'mokol mecher. There is even knas that would be paid at times that the father is able or has the right to sell her. But again, it doesn't. Don't translate this as saying that a father sells his daughter from ages 3 till 12 and a half. That's not the point over here. But it means during that time period there happens to be some overlap. Omar Rav Chisda, my time of Rabbi Meir. What's the basis of Rabbi Meir saying that a ketana no knas? Omar Kro. The pasuk says v'lo tia liisha. In this we've seen earlier, that a girl who is raped, she shall be unto the rapist as a wife. And we learn from this, b'mehave atzma kosum medab. We're talking about a girl that has the ability to give herself over in marriage. Now that is not present when you're dealing with a minor. So she'd have to be over age 12 for the parsha, for the section of the Torah that deals with the knas and the rape to apply. For Rabbanan, Omar Reish Lakish, Omar Kra, the Rabbanan who say that a ketana does receive or does generate a knas payment, the pasuk says na'ara. It's spelled in the pasuk in the Torah nun ayin reish. That's why you can see that we have based on the bach, the hay is taken out. Because the word appears in the Torah, nun ayin reish. It's true that when we read it, we'd be reading it as if there was a hey at the end, reading it with this vowelization, the double patach and then a koma, it's na'ara, but it's not written with the hey. And do note, by the way, that we have Reish Lakish in a volcano shape, and also listed as number 1. A few lines later, there's a number 2 on the side under the Mivneh heading. Shnei Lishonos shel Reish Lakish binyanara choser ksiv mazeh bo l'lamed. 2 versions or 2 stages in understanding Reish Lakish, who emphasizes this point of the word nara being written choser. Choser means missing or in absence of the letter hey. So Reish Lakish at this first stage says, by the fact that the Torah says na'ara without the hey, it says v'nosan lavi na'ara chamishim kesef. You shall pay the father of the na'ara, and it's spelled without a hey. It's missing. So afilu ketana b'mashma, sort of like knocks it down, not just the basic na'ara from 12 to 12 and a half, but even a girl that's missing all of those years, even if she's a minor, the payment will be made. So at this point, Reish Lakish is saying the absence of the hey is that which teaches me that even a ketana will receive will generate the payment made to her father of 50 shekel kesef. Shomer Rav Papa Braid Rav Chonon mi Beit Kluchis. Rav Papa from a place called Beit Kluchis, he heard this. Also Omro Kamed Rav Simi Bar Ashi. He went and presented this to Rav Simi Omar Lei. And he said, Rav Simi responded, Atun aho masnisu lo, anan aho masninon lo. You present the teaching of Reish Lakish that emphasizes the missing hay as a source for ketana generating knas. We have this Reish Lakish teaching, but on regarding a different point. And here we go. Omar Reish Lakish, hamotzi shem ra al haktana potter. The concept of motzi shem ra involves a man that married a girl. In this case, we'll speak specifically about a minor. And at the point of their initial intimacy, the husband says, "Oh, she's not a virgin. She was with another man." And then it turns out that he was lying. The Torah says a man like that was motzi shem ra, who literally spoke ill, spread a bad word, a bad name about his wife. He must pay 100 pieces of silver, not just 50, 100. Motzi shem ra is, in terms of the financial penalty, is twice as bad as something like rape. An interesting point to ponder, but that's beyond the scope of our shiur. So Reish Lakish has this following teaching, that if one is motzi shem ra about his wife, if she's a ketana, if she's a minor, potter, he's exempt from that payment. Shenemar, the pasuk says, v'nosnoi lavi hanara, nara mole diber hakosuf. The payment is made only if is first of all the fine of motzi shem ra for speaking ill in this context of that the girl I found her to be a non-virgin and she really was, and that we'll call it offense is penalized by a payment of 100 pieces of silver that is paid to her father. If he spoke ill of his wife who is a minor, no payment. Now, how do we know that? So, it's because when the pasuk speaks about the payment, it says the payment shall be made to the avi hana'ara. And here the word is spelled with a hey. Nara mole diber hakosov. And do note that this is, we'll call this stage aleph. There's a second stage of this discussion that will be featured with a bays later on. So in the meantime, because the word nara is spelt with a, it's complete. Nara mole dibra kosov, that would mean to the exclusion of a minor. If the wife is under 12 years of age and the husband had cast aspersions about the fidelity of his new wife, this would not generate the payment. Question, lasts a number of lines. Maskif lo Ravada baravo. So Ravada challenges. He says, are you telling me that the exemption of motzi shem, of the motzi shem ra fine, in the case of a ketana, is taima dekos rachmona na'ara? It's because the word is spelled out with the hey. Ha lav hachi. And if it's not spelled with the hey, havir amina filu ketana, I would have thought that even the minor is considered the subject of the parsha of motzi shem ra. But in that same section of the Torah, it says as follows: the pasuk says that if it turns out that what the husband's charge is correct, that she is discovered to not have been a virgin, based on what the husband is claiming that after he married her, after he entered erusin with her, she was with another man. It says in the Torah, if it turns out that the husband's claims are true and the virginity was not seen, wasn't discovered, the girl is taken to her father's house, and at the entrance to her father's house, she is stoned. She's put to death. A minor as everyone I'm sure knows, is not subject to any capital punishment. Now we dashed on the line Seklua. How do you know, therefore, that the section of the Torah that deals with the Motzi Shemra, which is as a package deal, if he's lying, if he's a Motzi Shemra, he pays 100. If he's telling the truth, she's put to death. How do you know that the Torah is talking about a non-minor? How do you know that the Torah is not talking about a minor? How do you know that? Well, it's because of the word saklua. Because the section is dealing with the potential death penalty. It has nothing to do with the way the word nara is spelled. So, what's the point of writing nara with the hay? What does that do for us? It can't be explained as we just did with our, let's say, our marking volcano number 2, that the presence of the hay in the word nara is the source of my excluding ketana. The exclusion of the ketana was from the fact there's a capital punishment applied. Ella. So rather, let's understand as follows. Kan na'ara. Here, the word nara appears with the hay, and in context I realize that we're dealing with an adult girl. It means she's over 12 years of age. I know that not by virtue of the fact that the hay is in there. I know it's because the word saklua, because there's a capital penalty that applies here. And it just so happens that in this context, the word nara is spelled with a hay. Now, from this we can establish other parts of the Torah, other places in the Torah where the word appears without the hay, afilu ktana b'mashma. There, even a minor will be included, will be understood as being part of the topic. And we look at the Rashi, toward the end of the Omid, 6 lines up from the bottom, the fact that the word nara appears in the Motzi Shemra section with the hay in it, it's not that the hay sheds light about the adulthood here by nara muras, by the case of nara. Elo al kol mokim shnemer nara choser. It sheds light on all other parts of the Torah where the word nara appears missing, meaning without the hay. V'yoliv hochi, and learn thusly. Kan, in the case of Motzi Shemra, she'efsher ela benaro, here where it's impossible other than when you're dealing with an adult. Ksiv nara molei. It spells the word nara with the hay. And as we said before, I know in context that you're dealing with an adult. To teach me that in other parts of the Torah where the word nara appears, it's read as we just did, patach patach komotz na'ara, but without the hay, afilu ktana b'mashma. In those sections of the Torah, even a minor is to be understood.